101 with Bob McCormick, featuring the Wall Street Journal, the news you need, and the information you can use. Now, here's Bob McCormick.
Ken Jeffrey is in for Bob McCormick, who continues his vacation. Nice to have you aboard. Well, we're wrestling with the fiscal cliff, and I say wrestling and fiscal cliff because they're both topics of our show today. We're going to be talking about wrestling, believe it or not, pro wrestling, in just a couple of minutes, and the big money behind that. And we're going to be talking to some local pro wrestling groups, too, and how they raise money for charity. All of that coming up. At the top of the show, I said we were wrestling with this issue, and they're certainly wrestling with it in Washington, D.C., and let's talk about wrestling, the sport that is. Some may call it a sport, others may call it entertainment. There may be a reason why Vince, besides copyright issues with the World Wildlife Fund, there might be a reason why the WWF changed its name to WWE, to World Wrestling Entertainment from the World Wrestling Federation. But that's Vince McMahon and all of that, and that's really, big-time wrestling. It's coast to coast. These guys are worldwide. And it's entertainment. Wrestling is done with a wink and a nod, and it's big money. I'm going to talk about the smaller-time wrestling, but these are wrestling organizations that serve the community. And with us in studio, Barry Cohen with EventBusters.com, and Ken Napzok, one of the head writers of the wrestling shows that EventBusters puts on. All of this under the banner of Millennium Pro Wrestling. And Barry, let's start with you. And what areas does Millennium Pro Wrestling cover in Southern California?
We cover primarily right now we're in Simi Valley, but we're looking to be anywhere we possibly can. We've been in Simi Valley for about 2 years now, producing for-profit shows as well as fundraisers, currently at the Boys and Girls Club of Simi Valley.
And how's it going? You've been doing this for how long?
Personally, we've been doing this for since on and off since about 1999, 2000.
Okay, now how did you and Ken, you're one of the head writers of the wrestling show. I was going to ask you about doing the writing and all that. How did you and Barry meet and get together and decide to do all this stuff?
I originally got involved with Millennium Pro Wrestling back in 2001 during the first run of the business, and I was a manager, as you call it. I was a ringside character involved with the owner, Paul Ventimiglia.
A ringside character? What's that about?
A ringside character.
What's that?
It's part of the entertainment. Like you said, pro wrestling is entertainment. It is theater. So you got to have characters that help move the story. So I've portrayed a couple of different manager characters, and taken my shots in the back of the head and bamboo canes to the back and 400-pound men squishing me from the top rope.
Oh man!
All in the purpose of moving the story, entertain the audience. So I started doing that about 2001.
Well, you're really taking one from the team here, huh?
Literally.
And Barry, you just sit by and applaud, right?
Actually,
no, you do a lot more.
Yeah, I do a lot of the production, live entertainment aspect, putting the entire shows together. I've been a manager a couple of times myself. I haven't gotten beat up as much as my friend Ken here has by 400-pound guys and put through tables and everything, such as
tables, ladders, and chairs.
Tables, tables and kendo sticks and anything, trash cans, anything you can find.
Man, oh man, oh man. Do you guys, we didn't rehearse this, believe me, but do you know how much money you've raised for the Boys and Girls Clubs over the years?
Yes, currently, the way it kind of works with the Boys and Girls Club is we do a 50-50 split right off the bat. So for every $10 ticket sold, they get $5, we get $5, and that doesn't include expenses or anything else. We don't take anything off the top or anything. So far, for the Boys and Girls Club, we've raised about over $4,200 for them, and they do the concession. So I can safely say we've raised over $5,000 for the club.
Okay, a little later on we'll talk about when your next show is and how people can get a hold of you, and regarding fundraising and all of that. Just want to talk real quick about violence, and because you do perform in front of kids, right? Children. Do you perform in front of? You don't do babies, right? From toddlers on up, 5-6-year-olds. How do you work that out?
Yeah, we've had we kind of market 5 years and up. We have family friendly entertainment. That's where we go for. We want the families to come down. We're not ultra violent. We don't do stunts with fire. We don't have people fall off. A 30-foot scaffold, which has happened before. That's not what we do. We're here to entertain the family. Sometimes they bring the 1 to 2 year old kids. That's just how it happens. It happens at movie theaters too.
Interesting. All right, we're going to open up the phone lines too. What do you think about wrestling? Is too violent? What do you think? Good fundraiser, family-friendly entertainment. Numbers here, 888-539-2980, 888-KFWB-980, 888-539-2980, 888-KFWB-980. I'm Ken Jeffries in for Bob McCormick. More with the folks from Millennium Pro Wrestling coming up on Money 101. Talking again with Barry Cohen and Ken Napzok, both of Millennium Pro Wrestling, and these guys are headquartered in Simi Valley, and we were going to ask you how your shows are different than from the WWE mass market product. And you said, first of all, your shows are family friendly. And I was going to ask you about that. You perform in front of children, and you eliminate stuff. You don't do fire. You don't.
Correct.
There are certain things you don't do.
Yeah.
But if you do tables, ladders, and chairs and all of that, how do you tell the kids, say, don't do this at home? We're professionals here and all of that stuff?
You always try to get across that message. In this day and age, it's very, very hard, obviously, with what's gone on, some of the recent tragedies. Violence is a key word. It's something that we as a business have to be concerned about. So you mentioned earlier the wink and the nod portion of this entertainment. I think we have to try to sell that. It's stories. It's good guys. It's bad guys. We sell it as a competition, but we have to sell the story angle, and create heroes for these kids. And we do. When one of our champions won, we had 50 kids in the ring with them celebrating the moments, the entertainment moments of it, and downplaying the violence.
Barry, I got to ask you, I checked your website, and as the women's champion, you have a fellow named Hector.
Yeah, Hector.
What's going on with that?
In pro wrestling, there are always surprises, and apparently Hector felt that he ran out of competition in the men's portion of it, so he decided to pursue another avenue, let's say.
So he's not the first transgender champion.
No, he's not transgender.
He's still a guy, right? Okay.
He is still a guy.
He's the intergender champion. He calls himself the real men's champion.
Yeah, the real men's champion.
Real men's champion. Though we do have another champion.
Yeah,
Hector Canales,
he actually was just voted female wrestler of the year. I don't know how that happened on our website for our year-end awards.
Can't imagine that. No, except in the world of pro wrestling.
Right.
I want to ask you this: how did pro wrestling become pro wrestling? In that, boxing. Generally speaking, boy, I'm going to make a generalization now.
Sure.
Is run on the straight and narrow, except for some stories that you hear about it being fixed.
Right.
But
sure.
But generally speaking, pro wrestling just made a whole, a left turn. It's not Greco-Roman wrestling like they do in the Olympics, which is on the level, presumably. But I would guess starting in the 50s and maybe even earlier than that with the advent of television.
Yeah.
The old black and white TVs, guys like Dick Lane here in Southern California,
right.
and the Olympic Auditorium and all of that, where wrestling became entertainment. And in New York too, I grew up in New York. We had guys like Anthony Naraka and Bruno Sammartino and these guys.
Great.
With some of this stuff was done, and Gorgeous George was, I guess, well known around the country.
One of the greats.
Days, where suddenly. Well, not suddenly, but pro wrestling was done with a wink and a nod, and you kind of knew it was fake, although they didn't say so at the time. How'd that develop? Do you guys know?
Well, there's a rich and wonderful history of pro wrestling. It goes back to the turn of the century when you guys like Gotch and Hackenschmidt, these great legends.
1900s we're talking about.
Yeah, we're talking 1903.
Right.
I think was when Frank Gotch was the first recognized NWA world champion, and in the history, the lineage of that title has changed. But I always joke it was the original MMA. It just got too boring. So you'd go around town to town working these carnivals, and you'd find your marks in the crowd, and you'd wrestle these put on these shows for the people town to town, and then eventually it became a work, it became a story, and then I think in the 50s with the explosion of TV, it's cheap programming. Programmers need content, and here you got this thing. You set up a ring at the Grand Olympic Auditorium, like you said, here in L.A., which has a rich history of its own, and it just became a staple of Saturday morning programming. And then Gorgeous George, you mentioned, was one of the first great heels of the business, who kind of came in.
I thought he was a good guy. No, he was a heel.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you bring the colorful characters.
A long time ago.
Yeah, and I think it just kind of grew from that. And there's a deeper history, of course. So I'm summarizing.
Yeah, in the 80s, you had the addition of cable, pay-per-view.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then it became the business that it is now.
Yeah. WWF, later WWE, certainly took advantage of that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because they needed programming too, right?
Absolutely.
The cable stations, WTBS, which is now TBS.
Right.
And
right. And Ted Turner got involved.
Ted Turner and all those guys. That's
Turner
right.
always says pro wrestling built his empire. That's what he built it on. was WTBS on Saturdays. 6:05 was NWA Championship Wrestling, later WCW.
Are there all, any of these so-called leagues still around? I mean, it's they pop up and disappear.
Kind of
right?
like in a shell of their former self, I would say.
Yeah.
Wow.
Vince McMahon, when he broke down the territories in the mid '80s and turned WWF into the global source of entertainment that it is, the business changed. But you always have the independents, and there's always other federations and little companies. That
and they're
spring
still
up.
around, right? I mean, like you
Absolutely.
guys and
Yeah.
others, and
Absolutely.
these regional companies that
And
play locally.
Yeah, and they're everywhere from Boys and Girls Club to, I mean, we started off in a Jewish community center as well in West Hills 10 years ago. And, we're at Boys and Girls Clubs. We were at a sports bar doing stuff about 2 years ago where we filled the place.
Which is always a good combination of wrestling fans, alcohol, and 2 feet from the ring.
Yes.
That was
You managed to sell this kind of as wholesome entertainment. I mean,
Yeah.
do you?
I mean, you're gonna play to the sports bar differently, obviously, than you will at the Boys and Girls Club. And
that's true. I guess.
Yeah, when we moved into the Boys and Girls Club last year, that partnership came about because we knew the Boys and Girls Club in Simi Valley needed some help getting some revenue in, and we partnered up with them. It was a good opportunity for both. We got the Simi Valley City Councilman Mike Judge was involved, instrumental in getting our two companies connected. So once we went there, we knew we had to kind of change what we were putting out there, and market to the families. We had to change the content, and we've done that pretty successfully.
Yeah.
Well, that's really great. You guys, I'll tell you, it's something. How do you tailor? You have to tailor the shows then for the audience.
Absolutely.
Right? Yes, correct.
That's one of the hardest things on the creative side is the long-term booking and trying to read an audience and what they react to, who they react to. You mentioned Hector Canales. That came about. Hector proposed that story to us, the ownership.
The female champion.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, let's give it a try. And the crowd just loved it. And the kids loved to boo him, and they loved to get involved in that storyline. And that's how it became popular, and it's carried over the course of the last year.
I saw, though, on your website also, you have some confrontations that take place outside the ring, sometimes in the parking lot of some of these venues.
Well, that obviously doesn't have anything to do with the audience.
McMahon's done that. Look, McMahon's done it too with WWE.
Right.
It's the old wrestling, the storylines and promoting the shows, and we'll have some web content of we'll go shoot some little shorts out in the parking lots, or promos as they're called, and we've done them poolside and had some fun with those.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you in our next segment, and I really want to get into this. Is how the wrestlers train for this, how they don't get hurt.
Absolutely.
I mean, it looks real. Mm-hmm. Now I know that these wrestlers are as skilled as anybody else, and they're as skilled as Hollywood stunt people, and they really have to be.
Yeah.
I think it's no accident that The Rock, for instance, Dwayne Johnson, one of the WWE's big stars, became a big action hero because he knew the moves and he knew how to not get hurt.
Right.
As well as play to a live audience, and that's helped him greatly, I think, too.
Yeah, that's right. And in the meantime, I saw the film that came out a couple of years ago, Beyond the Mat. Starred in part Mick Foley.
Yeah, Mick, he's a whole nother.
Mick was the kind of guy, he seemed to get belted every single time. Blood was always on his face, and he seemed to be a guy who really did get hurt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he's still alive. Thank goodness. All right.
God. Yeah, he calmed down a lot.
More by necessity, right?
Yeah.
More with the wrestling guys. Millennium Pro Wrestling coming up here on Money 101 with Bob McCormick. I'm Ken Jeffries in for Bob on KFWB News Talk 980. Money 101, I'm Ken Jeffries in for Bob McCormick, and talking about wrestling. And this is, pro wrestling. And we've never talked about it on Money 101, and it's a big money thing, big money all over the country with, of course, the WWE, Vince McMahon and all that. And also these smaller regional companies like Millennium Pro Wrestling, which is headquartered in Simi Valley. Barry Cohen with EventBusters.com runs Millennium Pro Wrestling, and Ken Napzok is one of the head writers of the wrestling shows, and Barry and Ken are both with us in studio here on KFWB. You want to chime in? Why not? 888-539-2980, 888-KFWB 980, 888-539-2980, 888-KFWB 980. I want to talk about Newtown for a bit. Now I know it's been talked about a lot, especially and not only this radio station, certainly others, but I want to talk about it in terms of what did you guys do to alter your shows, if you have, in the wake of Newtown?
Well, we're going to find our first show back is January 5th. We haven't done a show since that tragedy.
Right.
And it absolutely factors into what we do going forward. It has to, because we're marketing violence, like you called it, stylized violence. That's what this is. It's competition. It's sold as competition, and we can highlight the stories as best we can, but we have to be aware of who our audience is.
All right. We have a call, as a matter of fact. We can take it now. What's your name, please, and where are you calling from?
This is Scott from Los Angeles.
Hi there. What's your question?
Quick question. Well, actually not a question. It's actually a compliment. Ken, you mentioned about the Olympic Auditorium wrestling days, and
Right.
It's good that you bring up the old school. Actually, my father used to work there years ago for wrestling as well, along with Dick Lane. And I just want to pay a compliment to Millennium Pro Wrestling. I've been to a couple of their events, and every time I go, they always put on a great wrestling event. And if you're a wrestling fan, I highly recommend going to see Millennium Pro Wrestling, because they always put on a great wrestling show every month from time to time.
What do you like about their shows?
Well, what I like about their shows is it brings back the old school of wrestling. You know, they have the characters. You know, you can tell who the baby face is, who the heel is. And the one thing that they have that's kind of a lost art today is the managers. You know, you need to have managers in the wrestling business, because, you know, most of the wrestlers nowadays, you know, sometimes they don't talk when they do on the interview. And in the old school days, you know, you always have a manager to talk for the wrestlers, which really gets them over. And that's what Millennium Pro Wrestling has. They have managers, you know, who speak on behalf of the wrestlers, and that's how they get these wrestlers over, and that's how they can draw crowds. So I really enjoy their events every time I go.
All right. Well, listen, thanks very much for calling. We really appreciate it. Yeah, what about the managers? Do play a key role, don't they? Or the actors who portray managers?
We've both been managers.
Yeah, like the caller Scott was saying, it is definitely an old school thing. You had back in the 80s, you had Bobby Heenan and Jimmy Hart.
Bobby Heenan, I remember Bobby the Brain Heenan, I remember him.
The Weasel,
perhaps the greatest of all time, and yeah, it's part of the show. It's part of the old school vibe we try to put out. It's part of our business model, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to see if we have another caller right now. I believe we do. We do not. Okay. But still plenty of time for you to call in. 888-539-2980, 888-KFWB 980. Again, we were talking just real quick before we got into the discussion about managers and stuff, about Newtown and how you guys were trying to adjust your shows to address parents' concerns about the issue.
right?
Yeah, we've had some. We've put on what are called extreme matches. I myself was in one, and it's a weird. It seems weird for me to say it's from the inside, but it is kind of eye-opening to see when I get hit in the back with a kendo stick, how many people love it.
Yeah,
they love it.
Well, how do you do it? You have to know how to take a blow, right?
Sometimes you just got to get hit. Sometimes it just hurts. My first wrestling match back in 2000.
Did you ever get hit and then think, man, I didn't sign up for this?
Absolutely. My first wrestling match in 2000, I just started in the business, and Bobby the Brain Heenan was one of my idols growing up.
Bobby the Brain.
Jimmy the Mouth of the South Heart. And I was yelling at one of the wrestlers, doing my part as a manager, rah, 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 and he kicked me in the face and opened up about a 2-inch gash inside of my face. All 100% real. My mom hates it to this day.
What about you? I mean, didn't you feel like, this is painful. I don't want to do this anymore. You know?
No, can I tell you how weird it is? You kind of become alive.
What?
You kind of go, awesome.
Right, there's a rush attached to it.
I mean, and maybe we're the weird ones, Ken.
Yeah.
Maybe we're the weird ones.
It's interesting to get beat up and have your families at ringside and look over at your mom and cheered because you just got kicked in the face.
Yeah. It's a weird. But in doing that, and like you said, we are aware of what we're putting out there.
Yeah. And we have another caller too. What's your name, sir? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Yeah, hello. You're on the air.
Oh,
what's your name and where you're calling from? What's your name and where you're calling from?
I'm calling from Los Angeles.
Okay. What's your name, sir?
Chester.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well,
what's your question, Chester?
Oh, I have no question except that. Oh, yes, I do have a question.
Okay. Oh, good. That'd be nice.
Vince McMahon Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Back in August of 2009, and I heard this on the All News radio station.
Mm-hmm.
there was an announcement that he's going to start a 24-hour cable channel.
Yeah, they've been working on that for a long time, and that probably will happen. It's just there's so many gears that have to go at the same time with that.
Yeah, and I'm surprised, and thank you, Chester, for calling. We appreciate it. I'm surprised that hasn't been thought of sooner. You know,
right?
It's been a battle trying to get that to work for them, and it might now be an all pay a channel. The business model has
in this recession, and it's still a recession. Who's going to pay for this? I mean, it's with all pay per view does now. Pay per view does work,
right?
And it turns a profit presumably for these big time wrestling promoters. But would it be an all pay per view channel?
Well, that much like say an HBO or a pay cable channel, it might be something you just add to your tier.
Right.
But originally that was not the plan.
Right. If you look at the way some things are going right now, I mean, cable channels and even satellite, a lot of stuff is moving either online or on demand. So, I mean, it could be like, essential, like Howard TV, where he did it, where his shows are
Howard Stern.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. Where everything is one channel per month, and then you just click and choose what you want.
Okay, I want to get back to how people can get a hold of you. You guys have been doing this, since 2000, right? Doing these kind of shows?
We took a long break, but 2001, 2002, and then came back in 200010.
With a major show.
With the big show with Roddy Piper.
Rowdy and Piper's Pit. I remember that. I remember that too. The memories are flooding back now. And the liver spots are popping out all of a sudden. I remember that. Yeah, Antonio Naraka talking about one of the first guys, I think was from Argentina, and he fought barefoot, if I recall.
Yes, right. Absolutely.
And of course, Andre the Giant, and then Hulk Hogan, and Hulk, of course, is still around. Getting older, but he's still around.
Yep.
And that's another thing too. Wrestlers, when they age, do they age gracefully, or is that?
I think it depends.
Depends on the wrestler.
It depends. Yeah. It's just your body takes such a beating. On these guys are doing it 300 nights a year. And that's the big thing.
That's true, too. Yeah. And plus, there was a side issue a couple of years ago. I think McMahon was brought into court regarding steroids.
Sure.
And I think he was, I believe he was exonerated for that, all that stuff. But in any event, how do you put together an event? How do you, if I do a fundraiser and I need somebody to help out, and what do I do?
Well, first thing obviously is just depends on the organization. We go there, we meet with the organization, do a site inspection, make sure that the area can hold the fans safely. There's enough room for barricades. We put them on our insurance. All of our wrestlers, anybody who comes into the building that works on our production staff, ring crew, the wrestlers, all the way to the ring announcer, does sign a hold harmless waiver, which definitely helps.
Hold harmless waiver?
Hold harmless waiver.
So we're holding you harmless, right?
Right.
Right, that's what it is, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's very important because God forbid anything would ever happen, and we've never had anything happen because we try and run things fairly safely, is that way it's a lot of it's less off of the venue itself. But it's a great way to raise money. It's a great way to everyone to have a good time.
Now, how do people get a hold of Millennium Pro Wrestling?
Facebook, Twitter, MPWWrestling.com. There's 2 W's in that, so MPWWrestling.com.
Yeah, I was going to say Millennium, so it's Millennium Pro Wrestling.com. MPWWrestling.com.
Also on Twitter at MProWrestling1, the number 1, is our Twitter handle.
Yeah.
As the kids say.
Eventbusters.com. There's a bunch of links on there.
Right.
As well.
And again, your next show was when?
January 5th.
At
the Simi Valley Boys and Girls Club.
And you guys raise a considerable amount of money for them. And you got a fundraiser. You can get in touch with these guys as well. And if you need to do other business with them, now you know how to get a hold of them. All right, our thanks to Barry Cohen of Event Busters and Ken Napzok, also of Event Busters. And these guys also are in charge of Millennium Pro Wrestling, headquartered in Simi Valley. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us on.
We'll
get you in that ring, Ken.
Yeah, I'm going to be a ring announcer, right, for the next show, the show in February, is that right?
February 2nd, we'd like to invite you to come down and ring announce a match.
I got to practice that. How do I do that?
Practice. You got a good voice, so it's the start.
In this corner! All right.
Just stay away from... You'll be all right. Stay away from tables, ladders, and chairs.
Yeah, stay away from tables, ladders, and chairs. Yeah. Right. All right. We will have more. How to get the job of your dreams up next on Money 101. I'm Ken Jeffries in for Bob McCormick on KFWB News Talk 980.